Hi everyone, in this video we are going to discuss the ozone in the Earth's atmosphere. So to start off with, I want to just draw a picture to make sure we are all on the exact same page. So here's Earth, the very bottom. We are going to say this is at mile 0. And I don't know, I'll just draw a tree. Here we are on Earth. Okay, so the very first layer of Earth's atmosphere is called the troposphere. Troposphere. Now, this layer goes from mile 0 to about mile 9.3. About. It's not perfect. We definitely know we have a number of pollutants in here, including ozone. Ozone is the one we're focusing on here. And so ozone is actually a pollutant when we breathe it in the troposphere. So it's really bad for us down here. But what's really interesting is it's actually quite helpful for us in the next layer. So the next layer is called the stratosphere. And so the stratosphere goes from mile about 9.3 to about mile 31. It's not perfect again, but about mile 31 is where the stratosphere ends. And so the bottom half of the stratosphere, so from mile about 18.6 to mile 9.3, we have this very thick layer called the ozone layer. So that goes from here to here. And so obviously we have a ton of ozone in there as well. But what's interesting is that the ozone in the stratosphere is very, very different than the ozone in the troposphere. Chemically, it's the exact same. It's still the same molecule. It looks the same. It acts the same. It smells the same. But it's very, very different on how it affects us as human beings. And so before I move on to that, I want to add the last layer here, which is just called the mesosphere. So yes, I do expect you to know all these layers. And this is just the layers above 31 miles. So now what I want to do is go through and differentiate between the ozone that exists in the stratosphere and the ozone that exists in the troposphere and show you just the main differences. So let's start off by trying to draw a little map here. So here's ozone at the top. And now I want to show you what happens to the ozone in the troposphere versus the ozone that exists in the stratosphere. Now, like I said, it's the same molecule. Regardless of where it exists, it's always O3. Now, in the troposphere, we have a concentration of ozone, or we've set a standard that we try to aim to have our concentration on Earth here, for the air we breathe, to be at about 0.075 ppm, otherwise 75 ppb. Now that is very different from the concentration of the ozone that exists in the stratosphere. So the ozone in the stratosphere is actually closer to 12 ppm or 12,000 ppb. So let's talk about this really quickly. That means that we have in the stratosphere, we have about 12 ozone molecules for every 1 million other molecules or compounds or whatever that's in the Earth's atmosphere of just regular old air. So now in the troposphere, we are saying that we have an ozone concentration of 75 molecules per every 1 billion, whereas for this one in the stratosphere, it's 12,000 molecules for every 1 billion. I mean, think of that. That's a huge, huge, huge difference. But regardless, it's both actually quite small. I mean, there's not a lot of ozone molecules per every set or for every million or billion molecules of air. So relatively, we need to understand that we have a ton of ozone in the stratosphere relative to the troposphere, but in the grand picture of everything, it is not that much. We don't have that much ozone. All right, so now I've said enough about that, so we can move on. So here in the stratosphere, we actually have ozone acting as a protective layer. Okay, but in the troposphere, when we breathe this in, it actually acts as a pollutant. Okay. Now we know from our previous unit that it acts as a pollutant in a very, very negative way. It causes a lot of lung damage. And the biggest symptoms of it are that you cough, you also sneeze, and sometimes it can even cause chest pain, which is terrible. However, when we talk about it in the stratosphere and it says is this protective layer, this actually works, or it screens, I should say, harmful ultraviolet, so you've probably heard this word before, ultraviolet, but you've probably heard it as UV, and it screens the harmful radiation. Some people describe this as Earth's sunglasses, which I think is actually a great analogy. So it protects our skin, but we'll talk about it later. All right, so now it screens us from harmful ultraviolet radiation. So in other words, this is good. When we have ozone in the stratosphere, it's really, really a good thing. We want it there. It is a bad thing when we start seeing a hole in the ozone layer. Whereas when we have ozone in the troposphere, it's a very, very bad thing. It causes lung damage, it causes lung congestion, it's terrible for you, it's negative, so sad face, bad. You must keep this straight in your head. We want ozone in the stratosphere. It protects us from this harmful ultraviolet radiation, whereas we do not want the ozone in the troposphere. It causes problems for our health. It really messes up our respiratory system. You must have that clear in your head. All right, so we're going to review a couple things about ozone before we move on to the next section. And so I'm going to ask you the first one together here. Is ozone considered a primary or a secondary pollutant? What do you think? Good luck.